I would love to know how to run mega dungeons in an interesting way that isn't all just combat, but also offers interesting roleplay and story interaction opportunities. Do you have any thoughts?
The main issue with mega dungeons is that they usually don't have any reason to exist. You can always go for a wizard did it, but that is fundamentally unsatisfying. In the real world, mega dungeons aren't really a thing. Exactly. The closest you might get would be nuclear bunkers for the continuation of government and survival of important people. So you can look at those for some inspiration, but outside of Earthdawn, those don't necessarily have a great reason to exist in most fantasy worlds, which Mega Dungeon implies here. Real dungeons in real locations weren't necessarily that deep or anything, because it's an awful lot of hard work to dig out a dungeon from stone and earth. That's why there aren't more underground houses today, right? It's expensive and it presents a lot of engineering issues and problems for people. Mines provide the motivation to delve, chasing veins of ore and so on, and so they can often provide a decent basis for a mega dungeon, and you can get the plans of mines and so on in real life, though they tend to be somewhat boring depending on the mine. Natural caverns, if they sprawl over a large enough area, can make good mega dungeons. Again, you can get hold of maps and you can take inspiration from what you find, and those places can be expanded upon. I think for me, though, what makes a mega dungeon plausible and compelling in fantasy worlds is probably layers. I mean, consider Moria, right? An ancient dwarven city. Dwarves live underground. It's what they do. They're always chasing stone and gems and ore and all the rest of it. So there's a reason for them to delve, two reasons for them to delve, in that they want the stuff that the earth has and they like to live underground. But in Moria, they delved too deep and they found a Balrog's den. And the Balrog drove them out and also brought to it other monsters. So you have a dwarven city with a mine at the bottom. The mine delved too deep. There's some kind of Balrog chamber below, and there's underground waters and rivers and all the rest of it. Orcs and goblins and the Watcher in the Water and probably other things besides were drawn to the location by the presence of evil. They've made some parts of it their own. How did they get there? Do the mines tap into natural caverns? Did the orcs and goblins travel from somewhere else to get there? Where did the troll come from, right? Depending whether we're talking about The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, the trolls might be turned to stone by sunlight, so they probably live underground, right? So what happened to everything that the dwarves left behind? Where do the goblins live? How do they eat? Where do they poop? These sorts of questions. Are there factions amongst them? As there were factions in Lord of the Rings between the Uruk-hai and the original orcs and goblins. So I think what makes for a compelling and plausible mega dungeon is considering all of these factors and adding factions to it. Just think it through enough that it will pass muster at least a glance, and then you can develop it more deeply if you really want to. But it's just the mere act of considering these questions of practicality and layers of occupation through history and so on, that will fill out a mega dungeon and make it more interesting. So layers, like an ogre.